June 6, 1944. 5:30 a.m. Dog Green Sector, Omaha Beach. The first wave of American soldiers waded through the cold waters of the English Channel toward a beach that would become a killing ground. Above them, German machine guns in concrete bunkers swept the landing zone with interlocking fields of fire. Behind them, naval gunfire had failed to destroy a single enemy position. Within minutes, the surf would run red with American blood. Bodies would pile up in the shallows like driftwood. Entire companies would be wiped out before reaching the seawall. The 116th Infantry Regiment would lose 96% of its men in the first hour. 12 miles to the east, British forces were walking ashore at Gold Beach against minimal resistance. 20 miles west, American troops were advancing inland from Utah Beach with light casualties. The contrast was devastating. While other Allied forces achieved their objectives ahead of schedule, American boys were dying by the hundreds on a beach their own commanders had warned was unsuitable for assault. Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower had chosen Omaha Beach over safer alternatives because it fit his strategic plan better than it fit the tactical reality. He had prioritized political considerations over military feasibility. He had gambled American lives on a beach his own intelligence officers called the most difficult landing site in all of Normandy. This is the story of how Eisenhower's worst decision nearly destroyed D-Day, how the wrong beach choice turned the liberation of Europe into a slaughter, and how American courage overcame a planning failure that should have ended in complete disaster. The tragedy began 18 months earlier, when Eisenhower inherited a plan that nobody believed could work. January 1943. The Cossack Plan, Chief of Staff to the Supreme Allied Commander, landed on Eisenhower's desk like a death warrant for thousands of American soldiers. The plan called for landing 150,000 men on 3 beaches in Normandy, establishing a beachhead, and fighting inland to capture Cherbourg. Every experienced commander who studied Cossack pronounced it inadequate. Montgomery called it a recipe for disaster. Bradley said it was barely feasible under perfect conditions. Even Eisenhower's own staff described it as insufficiently ambitious for success, too ambitious for survival. The fundamental problem was beach selection. Cossack planners had chosen landing sites based on post-invasion logistics rather than assault feasibility. They needed beaches close to major ports, near suitable terrain for airfield construction, within range of fighter cover from England. What they got were 3 beaches that German defenders had spent 4 years fortifying into killing grounds. The strongest German defensive position was Omaha Beach. Codenamed Bloody Omaha by American planners, it featured 100-foot cliffs, interlocking bunkers, extensive minefields, and perfect fields of fire for defenders. German artillery could cover every inch of the beach from concealed positions. Intelligence reports described Omaha as the most heavily defended beach in the invasion area. Aerial reconnaissance showed concrete emplacements, steel obstacles, and defensive positions that would make any assault extremely costly. Alternative beaches were available. Sword Beach offered gentler terrain and weaker defenses. Gold Beach had been assessed as suitable for rapid exploitation inland. Even extending the existing beach assignments could have avoided Omaha's killing ground, but Eisenhower faced political pressures that made military considerations secondary. March 1943, the combined chiefs of staff demanded that American forces assault a beach that would demonstrate U.S. contribution to the invasion. British forces would land at Sword and Gold beaches. Canadian forces would take Juneau. Americans needed their own sector to justify the massive U.S. investment in Operation Overlord. Eisenhower understood the political necessity, but he also understood the military cost. Omaha Beach would require at least 10,000 casualties to secure, according to American planning estimates. British beaches might cost 2,000 casualties total. We're trading American lives for political symbolism, Eisenhower confided to his aide, Harry Butcher. But without American participation, there won't be an invasion at all. The political calculation was brutal, but realistic. Roosevelt needed to demonstrate to the American public that U.S. forces were carrying their share of the fighting. Congress needed justification for the enormous expense of the cross-channel invasion. American commanders needed independent sectors to establish their reputations. British alternatives were politically unacceptable. Montgomery couldn't be seen as the sole liberator of Western Europe. Churchill couldn't present D-Day as primarily a British victory. Roosevelt couldn't explain to American voters why British forces got the easy beaches while Americans got the killing grounds. So Eisenhower chose Omaha Beach because politics required an American sector, and Omaha was the only beach that provided sufficient space for a full-scale American assault. The military objections were overruled by political necessities. December 1943. Detailed planning for Omaha Beach revealed the full scope of the disaster Eisenhower had authorized. German defensive positions included 11 concrete bunkers mounting anti-tank guns, 35 machine gun nests with interlocking fields of fire, 4 artillery positions capable of covering the entire beach, extensive minefields both in the water and on the beach, steel obstacles designed to rip apart landing craft mortar positions, pre-registered on likely landing zones. American casualties were projected at 2,500 dead and 7,500 wounded, more than all other beaches combined. Major General Leonard Jarrow, commanding V Corps, requested permission to substitute Gold Beach for Omaha. The British beach assignments are more suitable for assault, he argued. We could achieve our objectives with a fraction of the casualties. Montgomery supported the request. Gold Beach could accommodate American forces while avoiding Omaha's natural killing ground. The change would require diplomatic negotiations, but would save thousands of American lives. Eisenhower rejected the proposal. American forces must establish their own beachhead, he declared. The political requirements are non-negotiable. The decision revealed Eisenhower's fundamental misunderstanding of the relationship between political objectives and military capabilities. Political goals could justify terrible casualties, but they couldn't make impossible beaches possible. Omaha Beach remained unsuitable for assault, regardless of political necessities. April 1944. Pre-invasion bombing revealed the extent of German defensive preparations at Omaha Beach. Reconnaissance flights showed new bunkers, additional obstacles, and reinforced positions. German defensive strength was growing faster than Allied preparations could accommodate. Colonel Benjamin Talley, commanding the 16th Infantry Regiment, submitted a formal protest. Omaha Beach cannot be taken by direct assault. German defenses are too strong. Terrain is too difficult. Casualties will be prohibitive. Request alternative landing site or postponement until defenses can be reduced. Similar protests came from every unit assigned to Omaha Beach. The 116th Infantry, 18th Infantry, and 1st Infantry Division all requested different beach assignments. Naval commanders warned that landing craft would be destroyed before reaching shore. Air Force planners calculated that destroying German defenses at Omaha would require 500 heavy bomber sorties, 5 times the allocation for any other beach. Even then, success was not guaranteed because many positions were built into cliff faces that bombing couldn't reach. Eisenhower's response demonstrated his determination to prioritize political considerations over military feasibility. Omaha Beach will be taken as planned. American forces will establish their beachhead regardless of enemy resistance. The decision was final, irreversible, and guaranteed to cost thousands of American lives. May 1944. Final rehearsals at Slapton Sands confirmed every prediction about Omaha Beach difficulties. Exercise Tigers simulated the German defenses, and American forces suffered catastrophic casualties even in training. Landing craft were destroyed by obstacles. Infantry units couldn't advance beyond the beach. Artillery support proved ineffective. Most disturbing, the rehearsals showed that American forces couldn't establish a sustainable beachhead at Omaha even under ideal conditions. Without German resistance, troops barely achieved their D-Day objectives. With German resistance, success seemed impossible. General Omar Bradley, who would command American forces at Omaha, submitted his final assessment. This beach is unsuitable for assault operations. German defenses are too extensive, terrain is too difficult, naval gunfire support is inadequate. Recommend alternative landing sites or massive reinforcement. Eisenhower's reply revealed his complete commitment to political rather than military logic. Omaha Beach represents American participation in the liberation of Europe. There can be no alternative. The Supreme Allied Commander had chosen symbolism over strategy, politics over practicality, representation over reality. June 5, 1944. The night before D-Day, Eisenhower visited American troops preparing for the Omaha Beach assault. What he saw should have convinced him to cancel the operation. Soldiers were writing final letters home. Chaplains were conducting last rites. Medical officers were preparing for massive casualties. Officers were briefing men on objectives they knew were probably unattainable. Staff Sergeant Robert Slaughter, 116th Infantry, later recalled, "We all knew Omaha was a death trap. The officers told us privately that casualties would be enormous. Some companies expected 75% losses. We were going anyway because someone had decided American prestige was worth American lives." Eisenhower spent hours walking among troops who would assault the most heavily defended beach in German-occupied Europe. He shook hands with men who would be dead within hours. He wished luck to soldiers whose chances of survival were minimal, but he never reconsidered the decision that had condemned them to assault an impossible objective for political reasons. June 6, 1944. 5:30 a.m. The Omaha Beach assault began exactly as every expert had predicted, with immediate catastrophe. The first wave of landing craft hit German obstacles 400 yards from shore. Steel spikes and concrete barriers ripped apart Higgins boats, dumping soldiers into deep water under heavy machine gun fire. Men weighted down with equipment drowned in the surf. Those who reached the beach found no cover except the bodies of earlier waves. German defenders in concrete bunkers had perfect fields of fire across the entire beach. Every machine gun nest had been positioned to cover areas that other positions couldn't reach. Artillery observers in church steeples could direct fire onto any point where Americans tried to advance. Within 30 minutes, American casualties exceeded all projections. The 116th Infantry lost 96% of its strength without advancing beyond the seawall. Companies that landed with 200 men reported 20 survivors. Medics ran out of supplies treating wounds from the first hour. Most devastatingly, German defenses that intelligence had identified as probably destroyed by pre-invasion bombing were completely intact. Concrete bunkers showed no damage from naval gunfire. Machine gun nests that should have been eliminated were operating at full effectiveness. Eisenhower's gamble on American courage overcoming German preparation was failing catastrophically. 8:30 a.m. 3 hours after the first landings, American forces held less than 100 yards of beach and were taking casualties faster than reinforcements could be landed. German commanders were reporting complete success in repelling the invasion. General Oberst Friedrich Dollmann, commanding German 7th Army, radioed Berlin, "American assault at Omaha Beach has been contained. Enemy forces are suffering prohibitive casualties and have failed to establish viable beachhead. Expect complete elimination of landing force by midday." The assessment was accurate. American forces at Omaha were being systematically destroyed by defenses that had been deemed acceptable risks by political planners who prioritized symbolism over military reality. Meanwhile, 12 miles east at Gold Beach, British forces were advancing inland ahead of schedule against minimal resistance. The contrast was devastating. British troops were achieving their D-Day objectives, while Americans were dying in the surf at a beach their own commanders had warned was unsuitable for assault. If Omaha Beach failed completely, the entire D-Day operation would be compromised. German reserves could be concentrated against successful landings at Utah, Gold, and Juno beaches. The invasion of Europe would become a disaster instead of a liberation. Eisenhower's decision to choose political considerations over military feasibility had brought the Allied cause to the brink of catastrophe. 11:10 a.m. 5.5 hours after the first landings, American forces at Omaha Beach finally began to achieve tactical breakthroughs. But success came from individual heroism rather than strategic planning. Colonel George Taylor, commanding the 16th Infantry, rallied survivors with words that became legendary. Two kinds of people are staying on this beach, the dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get off the beach. Small groups of Americans found gaps in German defenses and began infiltrating inland. Destroyers moved dangerously close to shore to provide direct fire support. Engineers cleared lanes through obstacles under heavy fire. Slowly, impossibly, American courage began to overcome German preparation. But the cost was exactly what every military expert had predicted. By nightfall, American casualties at Omaha Beach exceeded 2,400 dead and 7,000 wounded, more than all other D-Day beaches combined. The success at Omaha came despite Eisenhower's beach selection, not because of it. June 7, 1944. The day after D-Day, Eisenhower visited Omaha Beach and saw the cost of his political decision. Bodies of American soldiers lined the waterline like seaweed. Destroyed landing craft littered the beach. Medical stations overflowed with wounded men who had survived the impossible. Captain John Ryan, 5th Ranger Battalion, later recalled Eisenhower's visit. The general looked stunned by the casualties. He kept asking if the objectives had been achieved, but you could see he was shaken by the price. Someone should have told him beforehand what this beach would cost. Eisenhower's aide, Harry Butcher, noted in his diary, "The Supreme Commander seemed surprised by the extent of casualties at Omaha Beach. The intelligence estimates had apparently not prepared him for the reality of what an assault on heavily fortified positions would cost." The observation revealed Eisenhower's fundamental disconnect between political decision-making and military consequences. He had chosen Omaha Beach for political reasons without fully grasping the human cost of assaulting impossible positions. But the decision had been made, the lives had been spent, and the beachhead had been established. American forces were ashore in Europe regardless of the price. June 12, 1944. 6 days after D-Day, Allied forces had linked up all beachheads and were advancing inland according to plan. The Normandy invasion was succeeding, despite the near disaster at Omaha Beach. But the cost analysis revealed the true price of Eisenhower's political decision. Omaha Beach casualties represented 65% of all D-Day losses, despite being only one of 5 landing sites. More Americans died on Omaha Beach than British, Canadian, and American forces lost on all other beaches combined. The disparity was devastating evidence of how beach selection affected casualty rates. Gold Beach cost British forces 400 casualties. Juno Beach cost Canadians 350 casualties. Omaha Beach cost Americans 2,400 dead and 7,000 wounded. Military historians would later calculate that alternative beach assignments could have reduced American D-Day casualties by 75% while achieving identical strategic objectives. Eisenhower's choice had traded thousands of American lives for political symbolism that could have been achieved with far less bloodshed. August 25, 1944. The liberation of Paris provided Eisenhower with an opportunity to reflect on D-Day decisions. In his personal diary, he wrote, "The success of Overlord vindicates our planning, but the cost at Omaha Beach raises questions about whether political considerations should override military advice." It was the closest Eisenhower ever came to acknowledging that choosing Omaha Beach had been a mistake. But by August 1944, the strategic situation had changed completely. American forces were racing across France, German resistance was collapsing, and Allied victory seemed inevitable. The terrible cost of D-Day was being overshadowed by subsequent successes. Eisenhower's beach selection had nearly destroyed the invasion, but American courage had salvaged success from strategic failure. The heroism of individual soldiers had overcome the inadequacy of high-level planning. The lesson was clear but uncomfortable. Political considerations could justify military disasters, but they couldn't make impossible missions possible. American lives could be spent for symbolic objectives, but the spending didn't guarantee symbolic success. September 1944. With Allied forces approaching Germany, military historians began analyzing D-Day operations to extract lessons for future planning. The Omaha Beach assault became a case study in how political objectives could compromise military effectiveness. The conclusion was unanimous. Eisenhower's decision to choose Omaha Beach had been strategically unnecessary and tactically disastrous. Alternative landing sites could have achieved identical political objectives with far fewer casualties. But the analysis also revealed the impossible position Eisenhower had faced. Political pressures from Roosevelt, Churchill, and Congress had made American participation in D-Day non-negotiable. Some beach had to be assigned to American forces, and Omaha was the only option that provided sufficient space for a corps-level assault. Eisenhower had been forced to choose between political failure and military disaster. He chose military disaster and somehow achieved political success through American heroism that transcended strategic planning failures. The victory at Omaha Beach represented the triumph of individual courage over institutional incompetence. May 8, 1945. VE Day provided the final accounting for Eisenhower's D-Day decisions. The Normandy invasion had succeeded completely, Allied forces had conquered Germany, and the war in Europe was over. But the price of choosing Omaha Beach echoed through every American military cemetery in France. The 2,400 Americans who died on D-Day at Omaha Beach represented families destroyed, communities devastated, and potential forever lost. Most of those deaths could have been avoided with different beach assignments that achieved identical strategic objectives. Eisenhower's post-war memoirs acknowledged the difficulty of D-Day planning, but never directly addressed the Omaha Beach decision. He wrote, "Every choice in wartime involves trading lives for objectives. The commander's responsibility is to ensure that the objectives justify the sacrifice." By that standard, Eisenhower's choice was defensible. American participation in D-Day achieved crucial political objectives that justified enormous risks. The liberation of Europe required American involvement, and American involvement required American beaches. But the choice was also a warning about the cost of subordinating military considerations to political necessities. When political objectives require impossible military operations, the operations don't become possible, they just become more expensive. The 2,400 Americans who died at Omaha Beach paid the price for a political decision that prioritized symbolism over strategy. Their sacrifice achieved the liberation of Europe, but it also demonstrated the human cost of choosing the wrong beach for the right reasons. In the end, Eisenhower's decision revealed the fundamental tension between political leadership and military command. Political objectives could justify any sacrifice, but they couldn't make any sacrifice successful. American courage at Omaha Beach overcame strategic failure, but courage should not have been necessary to overcome preventable planning mistakes. The liberation of Europe succeeded despite choosing the wrong beach, not because of it. That success honored the men who died there, but it should also have honored them by learning from the decision that killed them. Omaha Beach became a symbol of American heroism, precisely because it should never have been an American objective. The most avoidable casualties of D-Day became the most celebrated because individual valor had triumphed over institutional failure. It was a victory worth celebrating and a decision worth regretting. Both lessons deserved to be remembered.